Yeah, it's a Friday edition of Mr. Relevant. How you doing, everybody? I'm Alex Strouf with you from the Everlight Solar Studio, downtown Madison. Last night was rough, man. The Packers get their asses kicked by the Detroit Lions. The score does not indicate the beatdown. It was 34-20, the final. The Packers now 2-2 on the season, entering kind of a mini bye. They get off until next Monday night when they'll head to Vegas to take on Devontae Adams and the Raiders next Monday night. And then they actually enter a bye. And for how beat up this team is, this is good news. But yeah, not great. Not great at all last night as the Packers lose to the Lions. I would like to make an addendum. I would like to make a note before we get into my Strouf's notes, which are on my $4 Facebook Marketplace whiteboard next to me. I would like to say I broke a rule I gave on Wednesday's program. I ended up being offered a free ticket. I'll talk more about that a little bit later, to the Packers game last night, as I was in Green Bay for the Green Bay game day pregame show. I had a great show with Torrey Lowe and Kyle Wallace, previewing the game. Everything we said was wrong, but it was still a great show. A lot of fun being in that atmosphere amongst all the Honolulu Blue, which we'll also talk more about in a second. I told Hunter on Wednesday, after he left Tuesday's Brewer game early when they won the NL Central, to never leave a game early. I broke that rule last night, just one day after telling Hunter never to do that. Hunter Vaughn, the producer of our show. I left the game early. I couldn't stand it. And I was standing for most of the game. I'll talk about that in about a half an hour. And I couldn't watch it anymore. I had enough. I left. I beat the traffic. I had a great ride home from Green Bay to Madison. But I broke my rule. So your rule today is everybody's a hypocrite. All right, let's get into it. It's time to get into Strouf's notes, and I already alluded to note number one. The Packers straight up got their ass kicked. It was not pretty. It was never pretty. Detroit won in every facet of that game on Thursday night. They were more ready. They were more physical, and they were flat out the better team, and they are the better team. The thing that sticks out to me more than anything now, as the Lions have beat the Packers each of the last four matchups they've had, dating back to when Jordan Love played the second half at the end of the 2021 season. For the first time in my lifetime, the Lions have the Packers number. I'm not ready to say the Lions own the Packers, but it is certainly trending that way. Dan Campbell has outcoached Matt LaFleur every time they've matched up. Last night was a clear indication of that. Last night was a clear indication of the Packers are not on the level of the Detroit Lions, which I've said a few times over the course of the last few weeks. I don't know that the Lions are cracked up or what they're cracked up to be or what everybody is saying they are. I think I still believe that, but they looked the part last night on a short week. They've played two Thursday night games. They've won them both against the Chiefs and on the road at the Packers, both games on the road. So for the first time in my life, the Lions are clearly better than the Packers, and I don't think that's changing anytime soon. They won on every level at Lambeau Field last night. It was one of the ugliest games I've watched in the last year. The only one that compares is when the Jets came to Lambeau last year and completely whooped them. I mean, that was a really ugly football game. 34-20 does not acknowledge the level of beatdown in which that was. Horrible. That leads me to note number two, and that is that nothing worked. The Packers ran 22 plays on offense in the first half for 20 yards. Their only first down in the first half came on a penalty. This is no longer an exception to the rule. I think the rule is the Packers might be struggling on offense consistently. You look at the fourth quarter against Atlanta, no first downs. Jordan Love goes 0 for 6. You look at the first three quarters last week at home against New Orleans, nothing worked. Luckily, they found a way to get it to work in the fourth quarter and win that game in an improbable comeback win. And last night in the first half, and really the whole game, nothing worked offensively, defensively, special teams even. Jaden Reed had a weird fumble that luckily they recovered on like their own 5-yard line. Everything was bad last night between Green Bay and Detroit. And that is, I think the level of concern, rightfully so, is up for me today. I try not to overreact too much, although I always do. I'm not saying the Packers are a bad football team. I still think they can maybe be a playoff team. But in a game that I had built up in a very catchy phrase that I came up with because I'm a genius. The quarter of the season NFC North Championship game. It was really a game where you were measuring up how good you are, right? Detroit has been the favorite all offseason. They've been the America's sweetheart. They were one of the best feel-good stories of the NFL last year. You knew this was their division to lose, especially as you've looked at the rest of the division through 3 weeks, right? Minnesota and Chicago are both 0-3. Heading into last night's game, Detroit and Green Bay both 2-1. The winner of that game gets sole possession of first place in the NFC North through about a quarter of the season. And Detroit is on another level than Green Bay is, which is concerning, but maybe that's what we expected all along. I don't know. But nothing worked against that Detroit team. Their defense is better. Their offense is better. And I mean, in the case of last night, their special teams is better. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned, but I'm not saying fire Matt LaFleur. But that leads us to note number 3. I think I'm saying fire Joe Barry. I really thought this year was going to be a revenge tour for Joe Barry. They have good players on that defense, and I know they were missing a crucial one in Jair Alexander again with a back injury. But when you do the same thing over and over and over and over again without changing anything, that is the definition of insanity. Keeping Joe Barry as this defensive coordinator is insanity. And when I say do the same thing over and over and over again, 2 weeks ago, the Packers allowed the Atlanta Falcons to rush for 211 yards. Last night, the Packers allowed the Detroit Lions and David Montgomery to rush for 211 yards. I saw a stat on SportsCenter last night that I want to steal. 100-yard games at Lambeau Field rushing. David Montgomery has 3 of them. There are 3 backs with 4 of them. Those backs are Barry Sanders, Adrian Peterson, and Walter Payton. Not bad company for a pedestrian running back like David Montgomery. But this isn't the first time we've seen this. Raheem Mostert isn't renowned as a top 5 back in the NFL. And 2 years ago, he ran for over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns in a playoff game on the Packers. Last year, we saw several backs do it. 2 weeks ago, we saw Bijan Robinson do it, who is by all means a very special talent. But David Montgomery isn't. He's kind of your league average running back. And he did whatever he wanted again last night. This run defense has been a significant problem for a decade. And I'm not blaming it all on Joe Barry, but it goes against Joe Barry. When you're in a goal-to-go situation and you have 2 defensive linemen on the field, that's concerning. I believe my 3-year-old niece, could do a better job. She just turned 3 than Joe Barry. I mean, like it's nonsensical, some of the decisions that have been made. So yeah, I'm really concerned about the defense. I'm really concerned about Joe Barry because, again, like I said, like I really viewed this year as an opportunity for Joe Barry to prove that he belongs, right? Like you're not an idiot. You know what you're doing. You've been in this position before. You can trot out a good defense, and they just haven't through 4 weeks. Last week was a solid defensive performance against the New Orleans Saints. And I gave him his credit on Monday. But on Friday, 4 days later, I feel like it's the same thing all over again. I'm beaten down today. That's why I'm slouching. That's why I'm leaning back. That's why my voice hurts. I just feel defeated. I feel like this team started so nice in all 3 phases, right? Against Chicago, a beatdown in week 1. And then week 2, they look like they belong the first 3 quarters on the road at Atlanta, looking to be 2-0. They lose that game in weird fashion, breakdown fashion. They respond in the 4th quarter last week against New Orleans, and now in a big divisional game, a national spotlight game, everything goes wrong. But none more than that run defense. Again and again. It just keeps happening. Like when do you look yourself in the mirror and say, all right, it's time to try something new. I don't think you can do it in week 4. Like you probably have to ride out the season, or at least until you're no longer playoff eligible with Joe Barry. You probably have to, because you don't have a better replacement on the staff. But it just pisses me off as a Packers fan, because we've seen this time and time again. And you'd think a guy like David Montgomery, who we weren't even sure was going to play in this game, you could slow him down. You could stop him. Supposed to be good in the front seven. You just do nothing to stop it. All right, that's enough of that rant. Last note is on Honolulu blue, which I did not realize was the official color of the Detroit Lions. I don't know if what I'm wearing today, my blue Adidas sweatshirt, is considered Honolulu blue. Thanks, Hunter. I think it's close, but so yesterday, a gold package game, I think it's called, is when they give 2 games to Milwaukee ticket holders and 6 games to Green Bay ticket holders. And one of those was a gold package game, which is the Milwaukee ticket holders. And we do our pregame show right outside Lot 1, which is the main tailgating lot at Lambeau Field. So I kind of have my back turned, but I turn around, I look a lot because I just love taking in the atmosphere, seeing what's going on in Green Bay. And I noticed both last week and this week, but much more yesterday, there was a lot of Lions fans. Like, I'm talking a shit ton of Lions fans were there yesterday. And it was like breathtakingly bad how many Lions fans there was. Don't get me wrong, right? Like, there's a lot to be excited about for the Lions. It's in proximity's sake, it's one of the closer opponents the Packers host this year. But why so many, right? Like, there should be some juice to this new era of Packers football. Yesterday was a big game. Should have been a big game. But I'm noticing that, on third down plays for the Packers offense, when Bill Jartz, the PA announcer at Lambeau Field, is saying, silence is golden, be quiet. And it's louder than when the Lions are on offense. And this thing has been taken out of context so bad. The Packers being booed off at halftime. I was Lions fans booing them. I was in the 6th level. Like, I had a good eye on this. It was Packers fans booing the Lions because they were running off the field first. And then Lions fans booing the Packers. So it was just a mixture of boos. I don't think anybody was actually booing the Packers, like a Packers fan, Packers on Packers violence. I don't think that was actually the case. I think it was just the Lions fans showed out, and good for them. And I don't know, the talk of Twitter today, or X or whatever the hell we call it now, is whether or not you should sell your tickets to Packers fans. If you're a Packers fan, I don't really care. I just expect more out of Packers fans, even if they're paying on the resale price. There was way too many Lions fans there. And as I was leaving the stadium with a bunch of other Packers fans, it seemed like half the stadium was Lions fans. It's weird. It's concerning. It's not good. One more note that came across right as we began today. According to the Associated Press, Las Vegas police has arrested somebody in connection with the murder of Tupac Shakur back in 1996. Now, I want to ask all the conspiracy theorists a question. Do we truly believe Tupac is still alive? Because I do have a theory that I think Michael Jackson may still be alive. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but I'm just curious because I think Tupac is probably the name that comes up most with fraudulent or fake deaths. And now an arrest has been made, almost 30 years later, 27 years later. So I'm curious what everybody's thinking on that note. We will talk about the Damian Lillard addition to the Milwaukee Bucks coming up next. Justin Garcia scheduled to join us. You hear him on the Milwaukee Bucks radio network. Coming up next, I got to ask him about this Tupac thing, though, because it is interesting to me. And Damian Lillard in Milwaukee, the jerseys are on sale. There's a welcome party coming up tomorrow. The Bucks are now favored to win the NBA title over the other 29 teams. We missed that on Wednesday. News broke like an hour after our show. So we're going to talk about it today because I'm sick of the Packers. I'm mad at them. We get a mini bye to kind of de-stress, be less mad about them. So Justin Garcia going to talk a little Bucks and maybe a little Tupac. Who knows? Coming up next, it's Mr. Irrelevant. I'm Alex Strouf.
Our conversation with Justin Garcia on Mr. Irrelevant is brought to you by my friends at Door County Distillery, locally produced, handcrafted, and award-winning spirits in beautiful Door County. Elevate your tailgate, elevate your gathering, elevate your party with anything and everything from Door County Distillery, whether it's that blue bottle of vodka, that green bottle of gin, any of the award-winning whiskeys, or anything in between. Right now, I'm hooked on the cherry brandy and cherry brandy old fashions. That's one of many unique cocktail recipes that Door County Distillery offers, and you can find a full list of those over at doorcountydistillery.com. And while you're there, find the retailer nearest you. Handcrafted, award-winning spirits made locally in Door County. Don't miss out. Door County Distillery and doorcountydistillery.com. Justin Garcia coming up next.
All All right, our buddy Justin Garcia joins us now from the Milwaukee Bucks radio network. Big news this week in Milwaukee as the Bucks acquire Damian Lillard from the Portland Trailblazers. Drew Holiday out, Grayson Allen out. But that's an afterthought after the news of the arrest of somebody that shot, allegedly, Tupac Shakur in 1996. Justin Garcia, always good catching up with you, my man. I mean, this is big news, right? Like, I was born after the murder of Tupac.
Oh, I was alive for it. I remember it vividly.
So what's your reaction to this news? This is wild to me, dude.
I saw the tweet about it and had to read it like 5 times. Like, wait, what? And some of the details in the story too of like they've seized his computers. Like, what are you gonna find in the computer from 97? Like, I don't know. I've had to keep going back and reading this. Like, what am I missing here?
Yeah, I'm with you. And your point on the computers, like, what was a computer like in 19?
Well, there's no way it's even the computer he had then.
Right. That's what I'm confused. Unless he's writing like
he's just transferring to every computer, like putting this here just in case I lose the other computer. I want a record of this. I killed Tupac.
Yeah, right. I don't get it at all. So are you part of the conspiracy theorists that believe he's still alive?
I am not. There's the Venn diagram of the Tupac conspiracy theorist, the Elvis conspiracy theorist. Yep. There haven't been any Biggie conspiracy theorists. Like, I haven't seen anybody saying, well, Notorious B.I.G. is still alive. Although I'm a
Michael Jackson conspiracy theorist. I think he might still be alive.
Really? Wow. So I have a funny Michael Jackson. Well, it's not funny because he died, but my Michael Jackson story is I was covering a Brewers game the day that he died for WTMJ. And it was the day of the NBA draft. And so I had to go from an afternoon Brewers game out to St. Francis at the time when the Bucks were at the Cousins Center, and that's where they'd hold their draft. So in the time between, he died in the afternoon then. And I got on the elevator to leave the Brewers game, and I overheard 2 people that worked in the stadium talking about Jackson that died out in California. And I had like no other details. So the whole time I'm in the elevator and leaving and listening to them talk, I thought Phil Jackson died. And then I get in my car and turn on the radio and hear Michael Jackson died. And for about 5 minutes, this is how dumb I was. Wait a minute. Phil Jackson and Michael Jackson both died today? Then it wasn't until like I got there and realized, no, it was just Michael Jackson.
Yeah, Phil Jackson's still with us. It is a funny story. I think if you told that story in 2008 or whenever he died, it might not be so funny, but it's been 15 years. I think we can let it slide. All right, let's get into this. Damian Lillard's a Milwaukee Buck. I didn't see it coming. I know there have been little rumors here and there. Just give me your initial reaction. I mean, obviously this is huge for John Horst and company pulling the trigger on this, because I think when you and I have talked in the past, especially in the playoffs, it seems like the Bucks have lacked some offensive firepower, and they get that with Lillard.
Yeah, I mean, that's been their biggest, I guess you could say, downfall. Really, the 5 years under Bud. I mean, that offense was pretty bad in the playoffs. You won a title in 2021, despite a pretty bad half-court offense. And I think it really peaked in the series against the Celtics, where that was just pretty brutal offense to watch by both teams. So this solves that. I get that you're going to automatically have questions about what does this mean for the defense. And I think there's a lot to unpack there. But look, part of the issue was, as good as the Bucks were defensively, and as much as Drew Holiday brought you there too, and he was a big reason why Brook Lopez was able to play the way he did defensively and looked like that. The problem that the Bucks would run into is you could come up with those stops, but they weren't doing anything with it on the other end. And I think most people will tell you good offense or great offense will beat very good or great defense 9 times out of 10. And that's kind of what the Bucks experienced, is the defense would do so much, but if you're not converting on the other end, before you know it, a close game is all of a sudden a double-digit deficit that you're facing. So Damian Lillard certainly helps you out there. And, on paper, it seems like this is a perfect fit to be playing alongside Giannis and what you would envision those two will be able to do in pick and roll situations, where Dame was the leading scorer as a ball handler in pick and rolls in all of the league last year. Giannis is at his best when he's that screener and the roll man. So I would imagine this is going to be one of the 3 best, if not the best offense in the league, especially what it's going to do for Chris, that all of a sudden he is the tertiary scorer. And then, oh, by the way, Brook Lopez is capable of scoring 20 as well. So the hope is our offense is going to be elite. as long as our defense is close to 10, maybe if we're at least in the top half of the league, because I think it's going to be a significant drop without Drew. But as long as we're just not in the bottom 10, I think that's enough to offset it.
So it's a good point, right? But like to your point, you have two guys that are defensive player of the year caliber still in Brook Lopez and Giannis, who's won the award before. You lose Drew, who debatably the best guard defender in the entire league, which is scary, but you replace that with such a better scoring option. And to your point on Chris, right? Like he's been relied on as the number 2. And when they lost him 2 years ago in that Celtics series, nobody was there to pick up the slack. And now with a guy like Damian Lillard, that just explodes the possibilities offensively. And you've got really, as you mentioned, 4 guys in that starting lineup. We'll talk about who that 5th guy in the starting lineup may be in a minute, but you've got 4 guys in the starting lineup that are all capable of dropping 20 plus on any given night. That's really exciting for Bucks fans.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say it's unlike anything we've seen. And Damian Lillard, when you acquire him, Bucks have never had a player like that before. But I mean, very few teams have. When his comps are, maybe he's a little worse than Steph Curry in terms of his offensive profile. I mean, not a whole lot of teams have had that. So I think it just kind of signals how everything is really changing too. In that, my big question or big thing to look for this season before this move was made was, what is the offense going to look like? We know that the defense before this trade was going to be a little different. I know Adrian Griffin has talked a little bit about wanting to pressure the ball a lot more and cause some turnovers, which Bucks didn't really do because they didn't want to foul and put opponents at the line under Bud. But really offensively, I was curious to see what is it that's low-hanging fruit that he thinks is out there that you can capitalize on. And do we see more pick and rolls? Because the Bucks ran very few of those last year and really the last 5 years. So even before you acquired Damian Lillard, I assumed we'd see some changes there, but I was curious to see what is this going to start to look like now? Because it was Bud's first year, that first preseason game where you really picked up a lot. I mean, I know we started to see some things in camp, and that's when we were starting to see the boxes that were taped on the floor of here's the spacing that we want. But I remember that first preseason game, the amount of threes that the Bucks put up, it was over 40, and just leaving that jarring and thinking like, wow, this is what we're going to do now, because that was not the shot profile under Jason Kidd. Not that it would be anything as extreme here. And Adrian Griffin has said, we're not going to not shoot threes, but maybe whereas it was let it fly in the past, now we're going to be shoot threes, but do it when it's a good shot and do it when it's in rhythm. So I was already curious to see how this offense looked a little different to begin with, and now it's going to look massively different.
Yeah, you're totally right. And I think I keep thinking back to a couple of things. And that's that Giannis, after the exit of the playoffs to the Miami Heat this year, when Eric Name, our buddy, asked him, is the season a failure? And I think other people indirectly are answering that question. Yes. Right. You make a coaching change. Now you go out and get maybe the biggest trade acquisition in the history of this franchise in Damian Lillard. And you're totally changing the landscape of what we know, right? I mean, it's still, this is Giannis's team. That's still the focal point number one. But now you're changing, what we have come to expect as Bucks fans the last couple of years, signifying to me, yes, last season was a failure, and we're not letting that happen again. So we're going to go get a guy like Dame Lillard, and to what we keep talking about, have 4 guys that can go out for 20 on any given night. It says to me, yes, last season was a failure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of people took it as that, and it was probably the respectfully Giannis, I'm going to disagree with you when he gave that answer at the end, but I think we knew too. And, Chris talked about this a lot actually on the JJ Redick podcast, a week or so ago, that the pressure this team felt in 2021, because they were basically in the same spot then as they were last year, as it would turn out to be, knowing if we don't win, things are going to change. And this guy that I play with, I'm probably not going to be playing with him next year either, because he's gone or I'm gone. Our coach is probably going to be different, and all that is kind of weighing on you. I don't think they entered the playoffs with that feeling, and it probably didn't sink in until you got to game 4 or 5 of, holy cow, like, what is happening? That you're kind of in quicksand and you can't get out of it, and then those thoughts start to creep in. So, look, it's a tough move to make, and I think you have to give an immense amount of credit to John Horst and everybody else in the front office and the ownership group to not only say we're going to keep spending money, and Giannis's point too of I'm not here to basically rebuild and keeping the pressure on the organization. Those comments I always took as basically his way of saying, I know we're good now. I know we're a competitive team. I know we're going to be a championship contender, but I'm saying this for 2 years from now, that the plan can't be we're running it back with the same group in 2 years when Brooks 37 and
Right.
Chris is in his mid 30s and Drew would have been 35, that we can't do the same thing. So you guys need to pivot and have a plan B. And that's what I took those comments as in the various interviews he's given over the summer. And I mean, it takes a lot of stones for John Horst to not only move on from Bud, the winningest coach in franchise history, one of 2 coaches to bring you a championship, the guy that really unlocked Giannis and got him to the level of MVP, helped Chris Middleton become basically a perennial all-star, did the same for Drew Holiday, transformed Brooke Lopez's career. So this was all positives from Bud. To get rid of him, and now for Drew Holiday too, as impactful as he's been, he is going to be remembered for maybe 2 of the most iconic plays in Bucks playoff history, and to still say, look, I think this gives us a higher ceiling. I know this is a risky move, but you got to make this move to be able to pull that off. We got to give John Horst an immense amount of credit for that.
I mean, you talk about the cojones on Horst, but also to your point with Giannis, right? Like, he's putting the pressure on, and I respect the hell out of it. My mind works in weird ways, Justin. You've probably learned that over the years working with me, but like I try to draw parallels, right? And it reminds me a little bit, just less disrespectfully, of when Aaron Rodgers kind of tried to apply pressure to the Packers and say, hey, we need to make moves rather than drafting a quarterback in the first round. But Giannis goes about it in such a different way, and he is such a respected superstar. He is a perennial superstar who appreciates the fact that he's been able to grow a team from, one of the worst in the league to one of the best consistently in the league. And he's going on these podcasts saying, I want to be here, but I'm only going to be here if we are setting ourselves up for success. And I love that about Giannis. I've really appreciated his, out of other fans of other teams have come to me and been like, whoa, are you worried? Or do you not like this? I'm like, no, I love this, right? It keeps the pressure on that Giannis wants to win championships. And as a fan, Justin, I want to win championships. I love that. I assume you do too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not as loudly or as bluntly as he did this summer, but Giannis said very similar things.
Yeah.
3 years ago before the first contract extension or max extension came about. And I mean, I feel the same way to you in what you've laid out there. And I think Giannis has to do this because, I've heard, I'm not the first to say this. You've heard a lot of people say like, well, I don't want Giannis. I love him so much and how competitive he is. I don't want Giannis to be on a losing team. Like that's going to be tough to watch if Giannis is on not a 15-win team, but if we get back to the Bucks from 2003, basically until Giannis started to really ascend, and this is a team that's constantly fighting to get into the playoffs and is a 7 or 8 seed year after year. Like, I don't want to picture Giannis on that. And you think back to Dirk, and that was basically how his career ended. He had those 2 finals appearances, but that was it. Like he was dragging some pretty bad teams towards the end. So I think the thought is, I don't want to see that. I want this organization to keep doing whatever they can to win and surround Giannis with the talent. At some point, Giannis has to make those comments that he made because we saw LeBron really, really execute this perfectly when he was in Cleveland, that he was the first to really do those short-term deals and keep the pressure on the organization. Now, it kept pressure, but it also had some negatives where if LeBron isn't committed, it's tougher to give things up. And I think we saw that ultimately the last 2 or so years in Cleveland. But really for his own good, I think Giannis needed to make it known. Look, I know I'm a loyal guy. I know this is my home. I owe a lot to a lot of people in this organization. I've said that a lot. But don't mistake that for me just being willing to sit here and we'll figure it out in a couple of years. Like, no, I want to be here, but I want to win. So you have to make me want to stay here.
It's really well said by Justin Garcia there. A couple rapid fires for you before we let you go, buddy. So this jersey release that happened yesterday, Damian Lillard wearing number 0, but Marjan Beauchamp wore number 0 last year. I might have missed it. Was there a payment made? What number is Marjan Beauchamp going to wear? Because this happened so rapid fast, it's crazy to me.
Marjan's going to be 00. No, he's going to be number.
I really thought you were being serious. Like,
no, I don't think
that was my moment right there.
I want to say you can't do that. That you can either have a 0 or a 00. He's going to wear number 3. I would hope Marjan Beauchamp got as much as he could. I'm sure that'll be the first question that's asked to Marjan on Monday at Media Day, and maybe Damian Lillard as well. It would have been very funny, though, if Marjan, this trade goes through and he's just texting John Horst like, hey, man, can't believe we got Dame. That's pretty awesome. Can't wait to play with him. Like, yeah, he's going to be contacting you, Marjan. He wants to wear number 0. And Marjan's just like, no, I'm not giving it up. I'm number 0. So, like, we can be teammates, but tell Dame he's picking a new number.
I think as a first round pick, you could flex your guns like that a little bit. I think I don't know. I would have been fine with it. I would have loved to see him talk about rocks, right? Like we're talking about stones with John Horst. That would have been the move for Marjan Beauchamp. They're throwing a block party for Damian Lillard. I see tomorrow.
Yeah.
Number 1, will you be in attendance? Number 2, has anything like this ever happened for a player?
Ooh, the last one's a good question. So the Bucks used to do a block party every summer.
Yeah.
For like 5 or 6 years, and I think it culminated with the opening of Fiserv Forum. But in terms of a player, their arrival via a trade, I can't remember it. I mean, the closest we get to this is that 2021 year when you would have all these gatherings to send the players off when they would fly out for whatever city they were going to on the playoffs. But I don't remember anything like this outside of a draft pick and their signing.
Yeah, it's nuts. Are you going?
It's still TBD. I got to see what my day looks like. It's kind of the FOMO thing where it's like, man, I basically start up with the schedule on Monday once media day begins. So like, it would be nice to have one other weekend where I can just do nothing and watch college football. But I don't know. What if I go there? What if I don't go and I'm the only one that's not there? Or what if I see all these images and it's cooler than I imagined? So it's a game time decision.
I advocate you to go because I will not be in attendance. So I want to like live vicariously through you if you attend. So that's my pitch. So you mentioned your schedule, and it's actually always fascinated me, and I like doing this podcast because I can ask questions like this. But like, what is it like for you? October through the end of the season, which hopefully is in June, right? You're working like 75 hours a week minimum. It seems like you're everywhere. And then, once the season ends, you actually get a summer, but then it kicks back up with media day. You just mentioned coming up Monday.
Yeah. Hopefully it's like October through not late April again. That was brutal. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, to peel the curtain back, I do another job in addition to radio. So I have that Monday through Friday during the daytime. And then I'll have games 3 days a week, sometimes more. We do the weekly show on TMJ and the post-game show after each game. I typically, during the week, will have usually one day where I don't have to go to the station or don't have to go to the arena for a game, sometimes 2, which is nice. But especially now, the last 2 years with everything additionally I've been doing on the broadcast, that one day is usually spent watching games of other teams, and especially if it's a good team, watching those. Like, I won't lie, there's times when I'll take it a little easy if you have like a 7-45 Charlotte Hornets team coming to town. Like, yeah, I don't think I need to watch their last 5 games. I think I'm good with the condensed version of whoever they played last. But yeah, I mean, it's probably close to 100 hours all told. But like, I'm not complaining. I obviously love it. And I think you do as well, that we're all in this business for that reason.
Yeah. You got to be a little crazy to do it, I think. And your schedule is one I probably don't envy, but I certainly respect. And last year was your first year in the analyst role on the Bucks radio network, which is neat, right? Like you had always done the pre, half and post game shows, but now you were in the analyst role for home games. And then you're doing everything starting like an hour before the game, all the way leading up to the end of the game, maybe half an hour before the game. But then you're doing a 1 hour at minimum post game show on top of all of that. So that becomes like 5-6 straight hours on the radio, like I would lose my voice. I just know I would. My voice maybe isn't strong and mature like yours, Justin, but like that's wild to me.
No, your voice is far more mature than mine is. But yeah, like that's the one thing, especially the last couple of years, like the good thing about COVID was none of us got sick. So like the first time I got a cold, which as you can hear, I'm just getting over one, perfect timing for the season. But the first time you got one after that, you're like, what is this? What is wrong with my body? So that's the big thing is like, I've picked it up from a lot of other people to always have like hand sanitizer and wipes to try and fight germs. Cause I've had a few of those games where you in the analyst role, I can kind of take it easy and Dave has to do the heavy lifting. But when you got to do the post game show and the local post game show, and it's a lot of talking, like, oh man, this is going to be rough. The worst part of it though, and again, it's not a complaint, but what you touched on is for home games, the coach will talk an hour and 45 minutes before tip off. The opposing coach will talk 90 minutes before. So I would usually get to the arena for a 7:00 game. I'll usually get there at like 4:00 at the latest, 3:30 ish to kind of go over some stuff. I'll catch up with our engineer, Ryan Elliott, and then Dave and I occasionally will talk about some things that we noticed or that we wanted to talk about. Then we'll go listen to the coaches talk. And after that, like by the time you finish those coaches, maybe there's an interview that one or both of us is taping and you got like 10, 15 minutes to go quickly get something to eat. I'll do that, sit down. And from that moment that I sit down, I basically don't leave for 5.5, 6 hours. That seat, it's not only like getting like, I'm still in the air.
Hold on. Stop right there. I'm cutting you off. So do you have the opportunity to go to the bathroom or is it bladder trained?
I do not. So, because so I start the pregame. So I got to be there for the start and I'm on every single segment of pregame, except for when we'll play an interview or a coach's interview. But even then it's like 3 minutes. So like, I got to be quick and you got to be decisive. If it's, I think I got time to get to the bathroom here, but you never have to go to the bathroom like right away. That's 10 minutes into the shift starting. So then the game will start and I'm doing the actual game with Dave. So I'm not getting up and leaving. Then we get to halftime and Dave can go walk around and go to the bathroom, but I'm doing halftime. Right. Then we get back into the game and then we do post game. So usually what we would do is, if that does come up, I have to wait until the network post game ends. And then our local post game will begin, where I would usually send something to the producers like, can you just play that first break here? So I have 90 seconds to run down the hall and go to the bathroom.
Oh my God. So I read Joe Buck's book a couple of years ago, and he tells a story about how he was at Lambeau Field during a TV broadcast in the 90s. And he had to go so bad, like he just grabbed a bottle and did it while he was calling a touchdown pass, which is one of the great broadcast stories of all time. So I guess, are you drinking a lot of water? Like, I'm so fascinated by this, not to talk about your bathroom habits too much, but this is wild to me.
So I typically do. And that was the thing that I kind of, it dawned on me a couple of games into the season last year of like, wait a minute, I shouldn't do this. Like I'll drink a lot of water. And I'll drink coffee like all hours of the day. I'll have a lot of coffee in the morning. I'll usually have a cup of coffee on my way to the arena. When I get there, they provide coffee as well. I usually get some coffee and walk around the arena with that. So there's a lot of coffee consumption. So it took a couple of games where it was like, I should probably stop drinking any liquids once we get to like 6:15 for a 7:00 game.
I love it. All right, that's enough of your bathroom habits. Last question for you. We ask everybody that comes on Mr. Irrelevant. This question, it's the last question. It's lazy. It's brilliant, in my opinion. Who would you like to see come on the show? The only asterisk is you have to help make the connect. I have an idea in mind. That'd be your broadcast partner because he's a fascinating background. But I'll leave it up to you. Who would you like to see join me for a conversation coming up?
Oh man, that I could make the connect. Yeah, I mean, that would be an easy one, but I feel like that's a cop out for me to suggest Dave. I think you can get him through other means. You know what? I'll say, since it's basketball season and I do have a relationship with this guy and he's great, especially I know you're a fan, but you guys can talk quite a bit about the Swifties and everything that's going on with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Ben Golliver of the Washington Post.
Sure. I am familiar with his work. And did you know I was a Swiftie? How'd you know that?
I've heard you talk about Taylor Swift before. I don't get it, but more power to you.
So are you sick of opening up every social media this week?
No, like I'm fine with, I just don't get, and I don't think this is you, I hope, but I don't get the crazed obsession. Like that's a bit much.
No, I tend to agree, but like I feel like everybody has a crazed obsession for something. Now, I think you and I are normal, Justin, at least normal guys, right? Millennials / Gen Zers, of like sports is ours, right? Like you're so in on the Bucks, I'm really in on the Packers and every Wisconsin sports team, really. Whereas, like I think for women in our demographic, like sometimes it's celebrities, and Taylor Swift happens to be one of the biggest in the world right now. I don't really get it either, but that would be my line of defense for them.
It feels like, and maybe I'm just dating myself, it was Chrissy Teigen for a stretch that she was up there, and I don't know who was in between.
Miley Cyrus was there for a moment.
Miley Cyrus was up there, yeah, but now like it's insane though. Like, all right, it's a bit much. Like I'm a super fan of many things, but like this is almost psychotic behavior. No offense to the Swifties out there that are, a good secondary guest you can do to get CM Punk on the show.
Oh yeah. Do you have a relationship with Phil Brooks, aka CM Punk?
I personally don't. I know a few people that have a entry level relationship with him, so I could introduce you to them, but I have a feeling we know the answer to that, but it's worth a shot.
Justin, if we get CM Punk on the show, you are doing the interview with me, because I trust your wrestling knowledge more than mine these days. I'm a little bit tuned out, but I do follow the blogs and everything going on with him being thrown out of AEW. Very interesting.
It's the toughest part of this year, or the year in the schedule, is once we get to this time of year. I mean, there's always a game on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. Yep. So I basically keep up with wrestling by way of Reddit now.
Yeah, that's fair. I could do this for another half an hour, but I think we told you 20 minutes. We've gone almost a half an hour. So, Justin, always good catching up with you. We'll do it again once the season gets going, and you actually might have 30 minutes free to spend with me. Always great talking with you, buddy. Thanks.
Anytime, man.
That's Justin Garcia on Twitter at TMJ Garcia. We'll wrap up the show next. Hunter Vaughn, the producer of the show, says Damian Lillard is ruining his life. We'll find out that. We'll also do what Strouf learned on bleacher seating. That's coming up next as we wrap up Mr. Irrelevant. I'm Alex Strouf.
Thanks again to Justin Garcia for joining us to break down the Damian Lillard trade here on Mr. Irrelevant. If you missed any of the conversations this week, they're all good ones, even with the Packers losing last night. The one with Jason Wilde on Wednesday, still really interesting and a fun one with Jason Wilde you can find from Wednesday's episode. Monday, we had Jim Rutledge on the podcast to break down the Chicago Bears implosion. As bad as the Packers look like last night, not as bad as the Bears have been the last couple of weeks. So those are our three guests this week. And if you actually use Jim's legal name, our guests' first names went in alphabetical order this week. James, Jason, Justin. How's that for a nugget? Find all those episodes wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Wisconsin On Demand, and more to come. We'll be back Monday. It's Mr. Irrelevant. We wrap it up next.
All right. Thanks again to Justin Garcia. That conversation was awesome. I always love catching up with him. I've known Justin for several years, and I always appreciate the time when we get to connect and chat about whatever, right? We talk Tupac, we talk Taylor Swift, we talk Bucks, a lot about Giannis, a lot about Dame Lillard. Really fun conversation with Justin Garcia, who you'll hear all season long in the Milwaukee Bucks radio network, including here on 100.5 ESPN on the radio signal. So good stuff from him. All right. We'll get to what Strouf learned. What I learned, because you learn something new every day. I learned something new yesterday. But first, Hunter keeps saying stuff to me about how Damian Lillard is ruining his life. And you're a Bucks fan, Hunter, so that's what I don't get about all this.
Yeah. So with Damian Lillard coming into town, tomorrow I'm going to a wedding in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And I get a phone call from my wife, who's a bridesmaid. And she was saying that the groom got a phone call from the hotel where they're getting all the bridesmaids are getting ready. And apparently Damian Lillard contacted the hotel, wanted to stay in the presidential suite, and then found out it was booked, to which then he replied, find out what their asking price is.
Oh.
And so they were like, oh, okay.
Dame Lillard might pay for the wedding.
Exactly. So I'm hearing about all of this. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like I would ask for, season tickets and a signed jersey and just leave it at that if I was them.
I'm going straight cash, homie.
But they're not really Bucks fans. So They were like, yeah. And then that ended up like falling through. He found somewhere else to stay. But then because the Bucks decided to make this an even bigger deal and they're doing this whole block party, the wedding is in the Deer District.
Oh.
So now I have a wife who's planning a wedding, freaking out about this, constantly worried about like, well, how's my mom going to handle all the extra traffic? How are people going to deal with this? Like this might delay the wedding. And I have to just keep like kind of assuming like, yeah, I really care about this, but I really don't care about hearing about this. So Damian Lillard's ruining my life because this is all I'm hearing about.
Time out. So number one, I assume your wife not a fan of the show, given that you just said that.
Oh,
that's okay.
I might get a call later.
Okay, fair enough. Number two, you alluded to an important detail there, but I just want to clarify. Hunter's wife is an event planner, so she's planning this wedding, but also standing up in it.
Yes.
This is chaos, so it's making your life at home stressful.
Yes,
but as a Bucks fan, you have to be happy about this.
I am, except when now I have a stressed out wife that I have to deal with because of all of this.
Huh.
So I'm really torn right now. I want to be super excited, but at the same time, getting multiple phone calls and texts is stressing me out.
No, I get that. I guess the good news is 24 hours to go, dude. Right? In 24 hours, you'll be at the wedding. You'll be having an old fashioned. It'll all be great. Interesting. Well, I appreciate you sharing that because you were kind of explaining this to me before the show. And you said, oh, yeah, you weren't here yesterday because I was in Green Bay for the Packers game. Well, I hope in 24 hours the wedding is paid off by Damian Lillard, or
that would be amazing. Or maybe he bartends at it, get to meet Damian. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, you'll be right there. So hopefully it works out for you. That is Hunter's. I don't know what Hunter learned, but certainly what's ruining Hunter's life, which may have ruining my life. Well, may need to become a recurring segment because for those that don't know Hunter Vaughn, he tends to be a little bit anxious, a little bit stressed out. So I
only a little bit.
I imagine this will not be the only time we hear that. All right, time now for what Strouf learned, and I'll make it quick. But I just bleacher seating at stadiums, I'm over it. And I'm not trying to sound like a brat, like a spoiled brat, or that I'm bragging or anything like that. I had a situation occur at the Packers game last night that I need to address because it was unfortunate, but it is what it is. So I ended up acquiring a free ticket right before kickoff. It was an aisle seat on bleacher seating. So I had seat one. And as I approached my seat, there was a man sitting there. And, no problem. Like, whatever. Can we just scoot down a little bit? And the group he was with scooches down, I don't know, maybe 6 inches. So I've got half of my left cheek on the bleacher. And otherwise, I'm pretty much holding myself up with my right leg in the aisle. So I'm doing it like mostly a wall sit on the end of this aisle. And the game wasn't going well. I think it was 14-3. They scored, and I just said, you know what? I'm just going to go wander. Because I was pretty much by myself. I went to the game with other people, but they were sitting in other areas. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go wander. So I went and found a beer, and I just start wandering. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to go. I'm not going to find an empty seat in bleacher seating. So I go from the 100 level to the 600 level. And may I add, I took the stairs. So I'm building up a sweat. I get to the 600 level. I found an area to stand. It's not standing room only, but it's in the 600 level right next to the suite sections, the outdoor suite seating of Lambeau Field. I had to sneak past a couple security guards. Good for me. I just found a table to like place my water bottle and my beer on. And I stood there the whole game until I left in the fourth quarter. But like, I could have stayed in the bleacher seating, but I probably would have had to tell a security guard and get somebody moved to their right seat. And it was just uncomfortable for me. I didn't want to do that. So I took one for the team. It was a free ticket. Had I paid for the ticket, I probably wouldn't have been so nice. But I ended up standing the entire game. So my legs are very sore today. I'm glad I don't do the show while I'm standing. But bleacher seating, not a fan, never been a fan. I think it's got to go when it comes to stadium seating, but it never will. But that's what I learned. Stadium seating equals not good. All right, big thanks to everybody that joined the show this week. It was an awesome week. Jim Rutledge on Monday. We talked about the Chicago Bears implosion. If you're a Packers fan feeling sad, you need to go back and listen to that one because it is hilarious. Jim Rutledge just totally in his feelings over the Chicago Bears. Wednesday, we talked with Jason Woolley. We talked a little bit about the Packers-Lions game, but most of that conversation is timeless. It was about Jason's background and building relationships. Really fun conversation on sports media, if you're a nerd on that. And then obviously today, if you're watching live and you didn't hear the conversation with Justin Garcia, a lot to be excited about the Milwaukee Bucks and Damian Lillard. So big thanks to everybody that joined the show this week. We'll do it again next week. In the meantime, enjoy football. Wisconsin football this weekend. No Badgers, no Packers. You get to watch the national slate all weekend. I'm looking forward to sitting on my butt all weekend and doing that. We'll talk to you Monday. This has been Mr. Irrelevant. I'm Alex Strouf.